Hello and welcome to the Nile 9 podcast. On this week's episode, we are going to be talking about J Dilla. It is Dilla Time. Producer whose work was so prolific that his MPC, his sampler, is in the Smithsonian. A producer who worked with hip hop greats and made his own signature rhythm. How he did that, we're going to explain. Not something which just happens overnight. A producer who died at the age of 32, sadly, from a rare blood disease and lupus. We are talking about Jay Dilla, born in Detroit as James Dewitt Yancey in 1974. He kind of changed how music moves. And I have to say, I was already a Dilla fan before we came to decide to do this episode, because the reason we were doing this episode is because on April 30th this month, we are doing a J Dilla Donuts listening party as part of the Listen Closely series we do every month, last Wednesday of the month in the Big Romance. And for this one, we decided we'd do his last album, which is the one that was released 3 days before he died. And so we'll get to that and we'll get to talking about that, because that is a seminal piece of work on its own. But what we're going to do in this episode is really just like give you the background about Jay Dilla and why he was so important. I think I've learned a lot in the last couple of weeks. I've been reading this book, Dilla Time.
Dilla Time. It's
which,
a tome.
Yeah, it is. It's a really good book. It came out in 2022. Dan Charnas coined the term Dilla Time, and that refers to the kind of rhythms that he had developed himself, that went on to become very influential in hip hop. We're going to talk about the work that he did, how he did it, the people that he worked with, the people that he influenced, and then end up around the time of Donuts and the influence that has itself. So, I think there's just in the last couple of weeks, looking at this, there are some songs that I realized I've been listening to my entire life that I did not know were J Dilla beats. Because I kind of, when Dilla died in 2006, I got really into the music, and I got really into what he was doing and what he left behind, but mostly like in his own solo work as J Dilla, or Jay Dee as he was known before that. So, and then there was a lot of posthumous releases that came out as well, the likes of The Shining and things like that were very much like his mother is a big part of it, Maureen Yancey, Ma Dukes. So, like, very influential because he died so young. He died at 32. So he left a lot of beats. He left a lot of work behind. And so I really just focused a lot on what Dilla made and what was under the banner Dilla. And I knew that he'd done loads of other stuff, and I was familiar with some of the bigger maybe artists like A Tribe Called Quest and some of the Pharcyde stuff he'd done, but there was a lot in there that I didn't know. I didn't really understand. So we're gonna get into that, I guess, because because there's a lot to talk about. Like, he grew up in Detroit. I think it's a key part of the story of Dilla, why he became who he is, because like people often talk about how like Jay Dilla changed my life. That was the thing that came out after he died, because people like said he changed the game. And at the time I didn't really know what that meant. I thought it was just like people really respected him. They thought he was this amazing producer. He is that. But one of the reasons why people say he changed their life is because he changed a lot of things about how music was made on digital machines, particularly samplers and sequencers, where musicians at that point in hip hop especially were like stuck to making a regular 4/4 beat on a grid. Jay Dilla bent that grid to his own will. He made that a part of his vocabulary. He made it. He was the master at first. There is no typically, music is made to a metronome, it's made to a clock in a digital space, and people play to the clock. And then in stuff like, in genres like jazz, you kind of play with that. You play with the time and the swing of it. So that's what a lot of what happens, and what has happened in popular music means that, jazz, swing music is where the timing of the notes come in an uneven pattern. Swing jazz popularized that style, but it became a shorthand for like how rhythm develops, funk as well, like how the expectations you play with in the music, things not landing exactly where they should.
Mhm.
But when it came to this era of music, people were starting to use, like, I mean, hip hop, a lot of people were using samplers and stuff to make music. Roger Lynn is a key part of this kind of story as well, because many people would know the Lynn drum, the LM1, which was, a lot of early Prince work. You can hear the big crashing 80s kind of drums on Prince's biggest work. And like 1999, for example, a good example, there's lots of Lynn drum on that track. But one of the functions that Roger Lynn developed as part of his own Lynn drum machine is a function called the adjust shuffle, and it was like written in a shorthand that looked like a adjust shuffle. So, and that was a feature that changed a lot of things, but most people didn't use it. So it was kind of designed to fix maybe what a live drummer had done.
Mm.
But someone like J Dilla started to use it on a later drum machine called the Akai MPC 3000, which is Roger Lynn developed for Akai. Now, on a lot of drum machines, there is this kind of function that allows you to change the ratio of swing. So swing being where the time is hitting, where the notes are hitting. And this can, like, a 50% is like a rock beat, right? 4/4 rock beat. But these drum machines allow you to kind of drift a little bit either side of that. So a swing ratio of 66%, for example, would be quite funky, sound quite nice, sound quite jazzy. Most people didn't understand this adjust shuffle function, and maybe what the idea was, and maybe like the idea of swing is maybe too jazzy for a lot of people anyway. We're talking early 90s, the beats are starting to get harder, they're starting to get more focused. But what Dilla did was play with the expectation of that, and using that function to kind of make a whole sensibility that he really developed. And that was, a lot of it starts with the expectation for where certain instruments land on a grid, right? So, and that makes sense.
And not even just certain instruments. It's like the very idea of what the job of rhythm is in music, which is a very, up until the 20th century in the United States, was entirely informed by Western art music, and the idea that, that you might deviate in any way from a beat or a rhythm or a timing that is pretty set, it would be interpreted as like a mistake. Do you know?
Yeah.
So like it's really rooted in what music is understood to be, as opposed to even just like what instruments should be doing. It's like fundamental to the idea of, like, what Western, like, canonization and control of what is and isn't appropriate within music. And I think that's like so important to say when we're talking about Dilla Time, when we're talking about the Black artists in the United States who have used rhythm in these ways to challenge that, and to blend different kind of cultural and geographical rhythmic sensibilities over time, that it is this like huge, it's very, very, very mixed up in, colonial ideas of like what is and isn't music, and what does and doesn't count as like as rhythm. It's a very controlling thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think before Dilla was like really starting to come into his own, like the idea of hip hop drums, a lot of genres around the time, we're thinking about like the likes of jungle, and where what people were doing were sampling live drummers from the 70s, funk drummers, because they wanted the human feel in the music.
Yeah.
But what they would do then is take this human feel, this human playing, and then put them on a grid, and then loop it over 4, 8, 12 bars, whatever it is, ad infinitum. So essentially you get some of that live feel of a drummer playing live, but it's looped perfectly. There is,
Yeah. It's quantized, I think
yeah,
they call
on
it,
DJ
where you like
equipment
correct it.
and drum machines, there is a button that says quantize. Says a lot of
Mm,
drum machines have those pads where people can like bang things out, and Dilla used them, but he also turned the quantize off, which is
mm,
anyway. So if you ever play an old funk track, when you're DJing, trying to mix that sometimes into a more modern song, the
mm.
time starts to shift out because
Yeah.
it's a live drummer. Like the time changes. It's not a grid. So Dilla really appreciate that, but I mean, other people did this before. But the thing
Mm,
is, he completely mastered the drum machine and how it works, and he used these kind of adjust shuffle function and time stretching in different ways
mm,
that were conceived to be used. So he often, for example, he often moved the snare earlier in a 4/4 beat than people would expect it. It gave this
mm,
kind of rushed snare feel a lot in a lot of his work. You can hear it. It's like almost the way in funk when people are told, like are asked to play behind the beat in like a James Brown song. So there's like playing with the expectation of where the music is or the rhythm is supposed to land, the
yeah.
note is supposed to land, the snare is supposed to land, and those kind of things give it a percussive swing that is kind of like playing a live drum set. It has this
Mm.
kind of laid back feel to it. Uh,
It's very human sounding.
Very human, yeah, yeah. So maybe an example here is one of Jay Dilla's kind of beat tapes that it was released posthumously. It's called "Are You Listening?" You can hear the start here. Uh,
Are you listening? Are you listening? Are you listening?
that is something that was very much prominent in his early work. You could hear that kind of thing a lot. A lot of the beats that he made in his early days, and for most of his career, had that kind of vibe to it. Here's
Mm.
another one from it's called 1070 from the Mad Jukes collection. So that was one thing that he was especially known for. Not, just that though. He did a lot of things. Like there's a in the Dilla Time book by Dan Charnas, there's a grid system that shows you and asks you some exercise about how to clap things out and kind of like show you rhythm. In one of the examples, he says, so rather than divide this grid up into eight, the way to do it that to show you how granular Dilla got with his beats and where he put things on in the time of the track, you had to have 192 different divisions rather than eight.
Mm.
And of course, if you're a regular drummer trying to keep time, you can't count 192
Mm.
that fast. So it's just the level of micro timing and like micro rhythm that he often used with gives the music some different kind of flavor. And often he would apply swing ratios and these kind of ideas to different layers, to different instruments playing at the same time. Some might be behind, some might be ahead. Um, it's some might be after. So it's just like it's like playing behind a beat, but everything is a bit different.
Mm.
Let me see what I could play now that might give you an idea. Yeah, so the Pharcyde's Running, one of the first big tracks that he produced. This all came about because we're talking about a young lad who grew up in Detroit, and he had this absolute like perfect pitch from an early age. He would sit in the park with his dad with a portable record player and play songs for passersby when he was like 5 or 6. His family had musical backgrounds. His dad was a jazz bassist, would play on him, like tap on him when he was a young kid, and his mother Maureen was a former opera singer. There was just something, he was so interested in music all the time. When he went to his cousin's house, he would spend time poring over the sleeves, reading the credits, memorizing all the names of the people involved. Kind of like this became his very quickly his thing. He learned a lot of instruments, drums, sax, bass, whatever he could get his hand on, he would learn. Almost like internalized music in this special way that became like the only thing he really cared about. So in his teens, he was really into just making music, and he did this with a tape deck, and he knew how to deconstruct the deck and make it again, bend it to his will. So he started making beats. He got into rap battles with his friends. He formed a group with T3 and Batan called Slum Village, which is instrumental in terms of how he made his music and how he became how he made Dilla Time. That's when that's his starting point for a lot of what he'd made. He was known as J Dee then, the quiet, shy lad who was obsessed with making music in his basement. But in 1992, James Yancey met the Detroit musician Amp Fiddler, who let him use his Akai MPC, which is a music workstation sampler, which he quickly mastered. And Amp Fiddler could see that this kid knew a lot about what was going on with that instrument. He'd mastered that instrument very quickly. He would make a beat within 15 minutes. He would be able to grab samples from different records and know exactly what he was doing. He had this mastery and very early on that it was that Amp Fiddler was looking at, kind of going, "Whoa, this kid is something special. He really is something special." Like Amp Fiddler was on tour with Funkadelic, and around 1994, he met Q-Tip of a Tribe Called Quest, and Q-Tip is part of, as well as being a Tribe Called Quest, like one of the main MCs. He did a lot of production stuff as well. So Amp Fiddler kept talking to Q-Tip about this kid Yancey. Eventually, he gave Q-Tip a Slum Village demo tape. And in 1995, Yancey and his pal MC Fat Cat ended up forming this group called First Down and became the first Detroit hip hop group to sign with a major label, because basically Q-Tip had become his evangelist and was like spreading the word out there. And Slum Village released their debut album called Fantastic in 1997. But the whole time Q-Tip was out there talking to people, telling people what was going on, that this kid was something special. So when Pharcyde came to follow up their debut album, Bizarre Ride to the Pharcyde, and their producer Jay Swift had left the group, basically they were looking for someone who could fill those shoes, and they wanted Q-Tip to do it. So they met Q-Tip and they were like, "We want you to produce the record." And Q-Tip goes, "Yeah, kind of like he was interested, but he also was like, you want to hear these beats by J Dee, right?" So he gives him these beats, and the lads were like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" But at the same time, they're like, "Is this lad messing with us? Like, who is J Dee? Like, Q-Tip's real name is Jonathan Davis, right?" So they were all starting to go, "This is just him." But he doesn't want to give us the Q-Tip name. He wants to do the project. So, but that is one of the things that happened. So we come to Pharcyde and a song called Run In. And so this quiet young lad, James Yancey, rocks up to Pharcyde and ends up like just grabbing tracks, making this kind of this Brazilian sample kind of thing work for the song Running. And because no one knew his work, essentially what was happening was that everyone was like, "Oh, this is cool, it's really impressive." And then they had made the track and they put it to tape, and it sounds amazing. It's one of my favorite hip hop songs. And let's hear a bit of Running from the Pharcyde.
Check this out, check this out, check this out, yeah. Check this out, check this out, check this out, yeah. Check this out, check this out, check this out, yeah. Can't keep running away. Can't keep running away.
So everyone was happy with this track, and they were like, "Cool, this is happening." And then everybody but the engineer and Fat Lip, one of the MCs, went off for lunch. And when they came back, Fat Lip had erased the beats from the track and put in more regular 4/4 beats. And this basically started a fist fight between the band because one of the other guys in Pharcyde was like advocating for J Dee and advocating for keeping it in, and he felt so strongly about J Dee's beats that they ended up having a fist fight about it. But essentially, of course, you can hear there, his beats stayed in, and so he became that song and the songs that featured on Lab Cabin California, which is their second album. You know, they were out on tour, they were playing gigs. The other famous tune on the record is one of my original, like, favorite all time is Drop from the Far Side. Let's have a listen.
Rockabye, baby. Listen to your heartbeat pumping to a fine ravine of all things. It's the vein of a shrine. Or missions impossible, possible.
Of course, that song is comes with a music video where they're performing the song backwards. They learned the song backwards. Spike Jones did it, and this song begins to prick people's ears, especially the likes of Questlove, who was in the Roots drummer, of course, and he says that hearing this changes the way he thought about rhythm completely. So I'm going to play a clip now of Questlove at the Red Bull Music Academy talking about and sitting in front of his drum kit.
As I'm
about
leaving
Jay
the
Dilla.
club, I'm hearing the vibration of the kick drum, and it was the most life-changing moment I ever had. Like, I had to get out of the car and run back in the club to make sure I didn't hear did I hear that? I mean, just the way that, whereas this part is normal, it sounded like the kick drum was played by like a drunk 3-year-old. And I was like, are you allowed to do that? So it's like, and I was like, what the hell is that? So the next day in Atlanta, I'm asking him, like, yo, what was that drunken song that y'all were playing? Like, what was that? Like, he's like, oh, yeah, it's bullshit. You know, it's produced by J Dee. And I was like, who was that? He's like, Q-Tip's guy. And then suddenly they let me hear a beat tape, and I just never heard someone not give a fuck. And that to me was the most liberating moment. Like, oh, so all this pleasing my father, being perfect, I can now like, now I got to undo all the education and all the hours of preparation that I did. I got to undo that. And it was hard to do. And then, you know, by the time that D'Angelo and I started the Voodoo record, which was like mid-96, that was the hardest thing ever because he constantly, like, he wanted me to drag the beat, but then he dragged the beat behind me. And so now I got to program my mind to think, okay, this is the metronome. And now he wants me to play. Which is, you know, I started having issues. Like, well, what if other drummers, like the musician community, is going to laugh at me? And he's like, nah, man, trust me. Like,
So yeah, there's Questlove talking about the influence of Dilla's beats and how he operated them. There are some other techniques that Dilla would use, and we're going to play some examples of what he would do. Like we said, playing behind the beat, the rush snare, playing notes early or late, whatever you want to call it, and varying dynamics to emphasize certain notes, like leaving silence in things, and the way that the swing would work. It's sometimes better just to play kind of tracks. He would also sample odd time signatures and make them fit to like a 4/4 grid as well. He introduced irregularity uh, and detail without fully syncopating the rhythm or adding extra beats. So, like if something was in 5/4 time, he might just adapt it to the way he worked. He would create these polyrhythmic loops of things working off each other. He sampled in odd loops, so say seven. He'd sample 7 bars rather than traditionally, people would do 4 or 8. So one example of that is a song called "Get This Money" from Slum Village.
Yeah, I wanna get paid. We dedicate this to these people out here getting rain. Where the pursuit of the money is reality. Never front on a click that you can't evaluate. See, I got things out here I need to situate. I got a fresh ass car with some gloss paint. People walking down the street to their feet stay.
It's the kind of thing that you may not notice straight away, and you kind of just have to listen out for it. Like here, let's play a few other tracks to give you kind of more of the J Dilla vibe. This is "So Far to Go," the instrumental track. Features on The Shining. Common and D'Angelo feature on the main version. I want to play the instrumental though. There's a Slum Village song called Players, which exemplifies one of the things that he often liked to do, which is slow down a sample to kind of make it sound like it's saying something else. So Dilla sampled a song called Claire from Singers Unlimited.
Something somewhere had happened to me, which I couldn't see, but then to me you're more than a child of Claire.
So that Claire, ever a moment so rare, that becomes Players when he kind of slows it down, so it kind of translates in that way.
788 D&T niggas, just like Jake the Snake. Actually, we don't participate, but if you do, then I'ma see you at your weight. Don't let the drama fluctuate. I don't want it, I got it. We could mistakes. Now what will we...
And a good example is his later work with A Tribe Called Quest. I mean, he did stuff like Stakes is High, probably like hip hop classic. I didn't even know that was Jay Dilla for a long time. And Get a Hold, Tribe Called Quest. He did a lot of beats and rhymes in life, music as well. So here's a good example. So this is I'm going to find this is Find a Way from A Tribe Called Quest.
Sitting rave and rant. Come on. Your name is out my mouth like an ancient chant. Got me like a dog as a pause and pen.
Speaking of which, got a leash and a wish just to rock you, miss. Make a militant move, peep my strategy. What? End of the day, you're not mad at me. Not dealing with nobody, now that's what you told me. What? I said, hey, yo, it's cool, we could just be friendly. Cause yo, picture me messing it up. Her mind not corrupt with the LC cups. Huh? Shit. I'm on my J.O. Come on. Bullshit and hoping that the day goes slow. Wow. Got me like a friend, what confuses me though is kisses when we breathe. Tell me what's the deal, yo? Now you caught my heart for the evening. Kiss my cheek, moved in, you confuse things. Should I just sit out or come harder? Help me find my way. Now you
So that background vocal that sounds like a woman saying the exact same lines is not actually that. It just kind of plays with it and makes it sound like he's saying the same words, but it's not. It's a completely different language. So he was very good at that. He was really good at samples. He was so good at samples. Like he made them sound like they were saying something else, but he could turn those kind of things into a different vibe. Here is DJ Jazzy Jeff talking about Dilla and what he did, because they became friends, because basically, obviously, DJ Jazzy Jeff, it was a legend of hip hop at this point already. And he invited Dilla James at the time over and watched him work, and he tried to emulate him. He tried to do it what he was doing. He first by testing different quantizations for his drums, 68 notes, 16 note triplets, 30-second notes. Nothing worked. He tried not quantizing, playing freehand, just like feeling it out. That didn't work. What James was doing wasn't accidental. It was very deliberate. He realized what James was doing was using the drum machine to shift the timing of the sounds. The snare backward, so it rushed a little bit. The hi hats forward, duplicating his patterns, modifying each of them slightly, and then stringing them together to form a whole. Jeff's discovery led to a deeper realization. Everyone in hip hop had heretofore been trying to cut, splice, and jam samples to accommodate the machine's time grid, because producers were focused on mining samples for their sounds. But J Dee did the opposite. He bent the machine grid to accommodate his sample sources because he was focused on using those samples for their rhythmic and harmonic feel. DJ Jazzy Jeff's fascination with J D's techniques was shared by several of the producers in Jeff's stable, many of them like James, hip hop head who grew up steeped in the deep soul of church music, and soon ideas began to surface in their production. So this is where the influence starts to come in. All of this stuff that Dilla is doing starts to sound different. Also read a good Reddit comment last night that kind of, when people are like the shorthand for, you know, what is Dilla Time and what makes him so special. One of his close collaborators says, "You think you know the sound of water flowing? Well, Dilla heard something else. Dilla's beats are more complex than what is just referred to as swing. Some things are ahead of the beat, some things are behind, some things are straight, some things are swung, some things are polyrhythmic. Nothing is quantized, each beat of his varies. This is part of the reason why he's such a genius. A popular Dilla-esque thing is to have the hi-hats behind the beat and have the snare ahead, or have the kicks be straight and the hi-hats be swung. But the amount of swing is somewhere between straight and triplets. There's lots more possibilities. Dilla also liked odd times and subdivisions like 5 and 7, the kind of thing that is difficult to work with, and only the kind of person who has mastered that craft can really do with ease, and that is something he definitely did. He started doing work for at this point, you know, the Questlove is influenced by him. D'Angelo hears it and starts going, whoa, something's going on here. All of this production and remix work, essentially Q-Tip becomes his manager and starts getting him work for artists like Janet Jackson, Della Soul, Busta Rhymes. He does Q-Tip's solo album. He does different kind of tracks. He influences a lot of different people. He does Common's album, like Water for Chocolate to 2000, and around 2000 is the real key time in the timeline of J Dilla's work, because he is working with a lot of people that become kind of his key people, right? His Soulquarians, as they call it. Before that, the other part of all this is that Q-Tip's very much about brotherhood, very much about like the collective. So himself and Raphael Sadiq and Dilla, J Dee then became known as the Ummah, right? So they would produce different beats for different people, but everybody made the money from each other's beats, and but it was collectively registered as the Ummah and credited that way. So only, I think for a lot of, this was fine for a while because Dilla was this young lad out of Detroit and was like, oh my God, I'm getting all this work and amazing, and like started to work with some of his heroes. But eventually it became a bit like, maybe I'd like to do that myself. So there was a bit of that in it. Here's a track he was involved in, and I didn't know he was involved in it until this week, from The Roots, called Dynamite.
Touch this elephant dynamite, yo. Touch this elephant dynamite, yo. Touch this elephant dynamite. Check it out. Come on, chain. Touch this elephant dynamite. Come on, touch this elephant dynamite.
So towards the end of the 20th century is when Dilla really started to work with other people. Obviously, he did a lot of things for, he did a lot of music and remixes. He did a brand new heavies. Did a remix with Janet Jackson. I'll come back to that shortly. In the end, he produced 7 tracks on Pharcyde's album Lab Cabin California, which was released in 1995. So that was really like influential and spread the word, the gospel of Dilla almost. But it came to around 98, 99, and Dilla came to New York and was working with D'Angelo. D'Angelo was working on his second album, which would become Voodoo. And really, it's a case of the D'Angelo being totally influenced by what Dilla was doing and reflecting it back to him. So at the time, he was in Electric Lady Studios and they were making this music, and it was a reflection of what Dilla's influence was. Dilla was there. Dilla was involved in Voodoo, but none of the music he actually made ended up being on it. But you can hear his influence in a few different tracks, certainly, and the way that D'Angelo played. And D'Angelo had like seasoned players involved. Like Questlove was doing drums, Pino Palladino was doing playing bass. Have a listen to this. This is 2 songs, The Root and Devil's Pie, and you can hear that kind of Dilla vibe in it.
Left a dirty stain in my heart, I can't refute. No, no, I can't. No, I can't. She done worked the root. In the name of God.
And then Devil's Pie from Voodoo as well is a good example.
Why is why till we fry? Watch us all stand in line. Folks like some devil's pie. Drugs and thugs, women, wine, 3 or 4 at a time.
So the way it was working was that basically the entire building, and Electric Lady is small. Obviously, it's where Jimi Hendrix recorded, and it's a small operation. There's 3 rooms in it for recording, and D'Angelo was a late night guy. He would come in at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Dilla was working with Common on his debut album, Like Water for Chocolate. Here is The Light from Like Water for Chocolate, released in 2000. So, you know, Common, D'Angelo, Erykah Badu, a lot of these artists were lumped into this kind of neo soul hip hop sound, and Erykah Badu was there as well, making Mama's Gun. Questlove was doing drums on that as well here.
But I scared to take the weight. So when I stumble off the path, I know my heart will guide me there. Ooh, hey, I'm trying to decide which way to go. Think I made a wrong turn back there.
So it became very much an influential group of people working together, trading off different beats and working around each other and changing times and playing at night, playing the day. So pretty much the entire Common Like Water for Chocolate album, J Dilla produced, came out in 2000. He also produced some tracks from Q-Tip's second album, which was Amplified. You'll know this one. It's called Breathe and Stop.
For real. Come on. A hard time if your motion is still. Let me move some things around because the lyrics is ill. Abstract, you know my sticky D in here. Niggas get on and swear it's the fucking year.
So I think at this time, Dilla had kind of had enough of Q-Tip's way of working, which, you know, very much is like crediting no one, but just crediting the collective. And Q-Tip as well, I mean, going from the kind of native tongues, conscious kind of backpack, gentle rap style of the mid 90s to this harder sound. People were looking for something different. But the whole time this was happening, there were people who were hearing Q-Tip and hearing Dilla's beats and going, that sounds good. I think I'll do something like that. So the first good example is Janet Jackson's Got Till It's Gone. It was produced by two boys, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, right? They really just were inspired to make the track that sounded like completely like Jay Dilla. And when Dilla heard this, he was not happy.
To love you, feel the right way. You again.
Here you go again. Joni Mitchell never lies.
Always seem to go, but you don't know what you've got till it's gone. You always seem to go, but you don't know what you've got till it's gone. You always seem to go, but you don't know what.
So Dilla started to notice that people were buying his style. Essentially, here is a song from posthumous song from Tupac called "Do for Love," which was produced by two Swedish producers who were called Soul Shock and Carlin. So it's "Do for Love."
The arguments are getting loud. I wanna stay, but I can't help from walking out. Let's throw it away. Just take my hand and understand. If you could see, I never planned to be a man. It just wasn't me. But now I'm searching for commitment and other arms. I wanna shelter you from harm. Don't be alarmed. Your attitude was the cause. You got me stressing. Soon as I open up the door with your jealous questions. Like where can I be? You're killing me with your jealousy. Now my ambitions to be free, I can't breathe. Cause soon as I leave.
But it was a song in 2000 that would really mark a change for Dilla when he became Dilla, almost his like origin story. A song called "Just Friends" from Music Soul Child, a guy that he knew, a guy that he was became friendly with, and he was like, "God, even people close to me are doing what I can do," and he started to realize, you know what, I need to do something different, and this is what that song sounds like.
Really feeling your style, 'cause I had to know your name and leave you with my number. And I hope that you would call me someday. If you want, you can give me.
So that the fact that people were copying him, cloning him, making it sound like a J Dilla beat or a J D beat at that time, a J D beat. It's hard sometimes to because you're like it's Dilla, but it's J D. And so at this point, he was known up to J as J D, and this is when he decided, right, I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna start rapping. I'm gonna do different things. He left Slum Village. He left them behind. He didn't want to be involved anymore. They had two albums. Slum Village, the Volume 2, fantastic. Volume 2 was the one that was really influential. You can hear maybe on his first debut album, which was called Welcome to Detroit, 2001. It had Jay Dilla on the cover, smoking. It had a girl in the background. It had a real like modern kind of I'm the artist vibe, right? So there's a couple of tracks on that which give you an idea of the kind of difference that he'd taken things in, and some of the old style is there as well. Here's the clapper anyway.
With a piece in your mouth. It ain't over cause they got the keys to your house, your weed and your car, about to spin your jeans at the bar. Fuck that. I know better. You can't floss around niggas with no cheddar. See these niggas with no cheese.
So he started rapping. He started putting down verses. He always rapped, but he never rapped on record. And this is BBE from Welcome to Detroit. So back to Welcome to Detroit. This is when things started to change. He became Jay Dilla. He was listed as Jay Dilla on this album. He had a song out called Fuck the Police, which was his first debut single. Here's that.
Another cop busted for illegal business. They out of control, they out of their minds. They pulling you over, they hopping inside. Just know you got drugs and know you got guns.
So yeah, he was turning into a different kind of artist. He was being a solo artist. And that around this time he started, touring and playing live. And in 2003, he heard this bootleg tape, and he was kind of going, "What the hell is this? These are my beats." Because often what he would do is send out beats, CDs, and batch CDs, as they call batches, to people to use potentially as beats on their tracks. And Madlib was a big fan of what Dilla was doing, but they never met. Like they were from different places. Detroit, the Motor City, maybe feels really far away from LA. If you don't go there, you don't have a connection. So Madlib basically created a whole album, a bootleg album called Champion Sound, and called it J Lib, basically using all JD J Dilla beats and rapping over it. So here's a song called The Red.
Instant leeway, instant replay, instant relay, instant MC producer and DJ. I do this shit without the sell people a three-way. You coming off like a GA. Anyway, hey. Peace to AG, peace to Pete Rock, Diamond D, peace to Seiji. Oh shit, look over there. Got niggas wildlife, cannibals. What else? Mel bashers.
So Dilla heard this and was like, "What's going on? Why are you doing this? Why are you releasing it?" It was like, "Oh, we weren't trying to release anything." And then he was like, "No, it's really good. Let's do it properly." So this is what happened actually. Dilla got really involved and they actually released Champion Sound, this version of it. So they did it together and they became this whole new thing.
I just hope you got a different mentality. Seen a lot of places and a lot of nationalities, and y'all turned up everywhere it's the same. Different people, different places, different spaces, different races, but everybody's still playing.
So essentially, he went to LA for a while, and he started. He met the Stones Throw people, the label, the influential label that MF Doom was on. Loads of different cool artists were hanging out and doing things. The likes of Peanut Butter Wolf, Egon, J Rock, all these people who were enthralled to what Dilla was doing, and he began to work with them. And he went on tour, but something happened in 2003. He developed a blood disease, and this came out of nowhere. So he developed this illness. He was real sluggish. He didn't know what was going on. He was diagnosed with TTP, a blood disease so rare that only a dozen in a million develop it. And he wasn't doing well. He wasn't doing well at all. Himself, he was like, okay, I need to go and do something different. He went to live with Common in LA and thought, oh, I'll go work. I'll do this. They went on the J-Lib tour. And that's when he really fell in with the Stones Throw crew and, was going on tour. His health deteriorated over time. It came back. He ended up a couple of years later in 2005. He'd been on tour. He was going out and sometimes in a wheelchair just to do it. He just didn't want to stop. But he developed lupus in 2005, an autoimmune disease in which the body basically attacks the healthy tissues. He ended up in Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Things were not good. This was a real deterioration to the point where people were like, okay, this isn't going away. And I think he kept it hidden from a lot of people. So there's a documentary called Brazilian Time, which a Limerick photographer who you may have heard of and mentioned before, Brian Cross, B+, who lived in LA and did a lot of photography for Stones Throw, MF Doom, all the crew are out there. They became friendly and so basically Dilla always wanted to go to Brazil. And so they made it happen. And when they went to pick him up, they only saw how frail he was and how he just wasn't really there as much as they knew. He kept everything hidden from him, from his friends, and people didn't know. Common knew because he was living with him, but other than that, it really, really was a dark, dark time. So he went to Brazil. Then they ended up sending him home because a doctor there told him they could treat him, but he wanted to go home, and he said, you could die. This is how bad this is getting. So essentially what happened was he went back. His mother looked after him in Detroit. He went to Cedars-Sinai Hospital in LA. So the thing about Donuts, we get to Donuts, which is only his second album and his final album. It's an album he probably didn't even think of as an album. And much of what we've already discussed on Donuts isn't really present. The kind of Dilla Time idea, the crisp beats, the swing of it all, they're not really there. Because the man had deteriorated, and he's trying something different. He's doing something completely off the wall in a way. There's conflicting accounts about how Donuts was made. essentially, one account states that Dilla made the album in his hospital bed, and he would be in Cedar Sinai, and he made the album. You know, had a sampler, had vinyl, had a record player, and his mother, which this seems to be have happened. You know, his mother was like massaging his hands so he could sample again, this kind of thing. The other account, which Dilla Time, Dan Charnas, who interviews 200 people for this book, um, makes an alternative case, states that it was actually made before that and maybe edited in hospital, but finalized by Stone's Throw art director Jeff Yank. I think when the album was released, because it was released 3 days, he was sick. They knew he was going to die, basically. So there was very much a case of the legend was here's an album this revered hip hop producer made essentially on his deathbed, which became that narrative developed very quickly. I don't think Stone's Throw really pushed back about that because ultimately they ended up selling a lot of records. I mean, they just didn't say anything about it, but they kind of the narrative became, oh my god, this is like a final work, like Lazarus, like David Bowie's work. It's like it's hard to set. You cannot separate the art from the experience of it being made and the consequence and the context in which it was made, which is Jay Dilla just turned 32. He made an album of 31 tracks, one for each year of his life. This is what featured on the beat tape. Donuts was named after food he wasn't supposed to be eating in the last few months of his life. I think what we can be sure of, however it was finished, it remains a deeply moving, psychedelic, weird, soulful, singular final statement, whether it was intended that way or not. And I think what you can hear is a man, a producer who made music all his life and who never stopped making. In the final days of his life, his final months, this intense, high functioning creativity set against the backdrop of what may be coming. And a lot of Donuts features lyrics and like it's an instrumental album, but a lot of samples on it. A lot of samples. Like even if you just read out some of the tracks on it, it's very much like it feels like a parting gift. It feels like he's speaking to his mother, he's speaking to his partner, he's speaking to the people in his life in these songs. I can't stand to see you cry, but the escorts, walk on by, don't say goodnight with the Isley brothers. You're gonna need me, Diana Warwick. My people, hold on. There's so much in this that seems to speak to his experience, and I think that's one reason why Donuts is considered one of the greatest hip hop instrumental albums of all time. And let's play a track from it. Let's play Two Can Win first for a start, which samples Only One Can Win. So this is Two Can Win.
Only one can win, only one will win. Only can win, only one can win your love. Only one can win, only one will win. Only one can win, only one will win. Only one can win, only one will win.
Many of the songs on Donuts are short. They're a minute and a half. They feel like unfinished ideas. The whole thing is 31 songs, 43 minutes. It starts as it ends, like a donut, like an infinity loop. And whether it's true that he made this when he was hospitalized or he continued to work on it, there certainly seems to be true. He definitely was working right up to the last night of his life. He definitely was working on music the whole time. His mother said he would, when he woke up in his hospital bed, he would sometimes ask her to move him and to basically his workstation, or sometimes bring it over. It's not clear whether the music that he made at that point is on Donuts, but he certainly was making the music. But yeah, I think so. Dan Charnas in Dilla Time says that a lot of Dilla's work on Donuts was actually made not with a drum machine that he became known for, but he says that a lot of it was actually used with a computer, with Pro Tools audio editing software. And the reason he says this is what happened is because the time stretching used throughout the album is impossible to achieve on an Akai that he normally used. So there are aspects of that. Also, the album was edited after the fact because he was so sick. Jeff Yank was like, "Well, I'm not going to go and ask him for the multi track files." So essentially, they had the stereo mix, and they edited that. So a lot of what you hear, and maybe that contributes to this kind of chaotic fashion. If you listen to "Working on It," that was the first track that Jeff Yank, because they basically proposed to Dilla, was like, "We should release this. It's so good," and he was like, "Well, it's not finished." It was like, we need to finish it. I was like, well, he just said, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? So he gave his blessing to finish it. So on this song, you can hear a 10cc song called "The Worst Band in the World," which is kind of a very funny song from an English band. You can hear this.
It's one thing to know it, but another to admit we're the worst band in the world, but we don't give up.
That's the original sample, and here is "Working on It" from J Dilla.
Center stage.
That is the longest song on the record, and later on it changes into a different kind of vibe with the same sample source as well. So, how do we think about Donuts in terms of Dilla's career? Well, obviously it will never not be tied to the finality of his death, but in many ways, Donuts operates as a sort of a magic trick, because a lot of what he's doing on the record is taking these very recognizable samples that have been used in hip hop and going, look what I can do with it. And the reason is because he started to hear the likes of Kanye and Just Blaze, who were using chopped up soul samples with a sophistication that he had never heard before. And there was a sense of competition there, I think, where he was like, I want to show them I can do this. So there's that kind of confrontational, like this is a man who's used to doing beat tapes and beat battles they used to do. If you read in Dilla Time, there's a great passage about him and Questlove stuck in a house, and they basically had a beat battle where Questlove really realized how good he was at making beats out of thin air, essentially, about tracks that you were like, no one else could find any samples on this, or it's very difficult, but he would make an entire song out of this. So he was always really good at that. So I think a lot of what's happening on Donuts is, apart from the context in which it was made, is him trying to go, hey, look what I can do. So let's play a couple of tracks on that. A good example is Time, the Donut of the Heart.
Okay.
There comes a time.
Well, he's just kind of playing with time stretching and changing the sample, chopping it up in different ways that he didn't normally do, and you can hear that throughout. Some of these songs seem to be, there's a lot of melancholy obviously in this record, because there's like tracks like Don't Cry and Waves. The suggestion is that the lyric of the 10cc song Johnny Don't Do It is chopped up to say Johnny Do It, is a reference to his younger brother who's called John, and who was kind of wanted to follow in his brother's footsteps but hadn't really started making music yet, and this was his kind of encouragement to do so. His brother would end up making music as Illa J as well. So, but I think the album has this kind of like rough shodness to it. It's like not in the construction of the tracks, but how it's finished. And that's like tracks stopping abruptly, whether it's on to the next thing. It's a quick fire bed of like a million different ideas working together. Like it's like falling on top of each other, as if like a piano falling on top of off a building on top of the track. It's like all of a sudden these things are slammed into each other. Um, and so that gives it an urgency that maybe a lot of his work doesn't have. And so yeah, I think it's a real it's so interesting. And I think the more you listen to it, and I'm even like I've listened to it so many times in my life, but now going back to it, I'm like still hearing different things and the way that the samples speak in different ways. It's such beautiful music. Here's You Love from J Dilla.
I let you treat me to love you. Go, go, go. Love you. Love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you, baby. Really love you. Just because I really love you, baby. I love you.
You can hear on that track, it kind of moves around the sample source. It takes different parts of the same song and puts them together in a way that works on its own in a really fresh way. One more. Here's Don't Cry.
I can't stand to see you cry, no, baby, now. Baby. I don't.
So yeah, that's Donuts. We're going to play that in full on April 30th in the Big Romance. Looking forward to that. What was your relationship with Donuts?
Certainly wasn't aware of it when it came out. I reckon I got into Dilla around the same time I got into Doom, maybe. Kind of like Dilla, Doom, Madlib, all sort of like happened at the same time in my life. And yeah, I love Donuts. I think it's I think you described it really well. It had a sense of urgency. Obviously, you can't separate it from when it was released, but I think even more than that, it's just the result of somebody who has had a lifetime, a very short lifetime of too many ideas. You know, there's a lot of musicians who could live to the age of 100 and not have the complexity and diversity of musical ideas that Dilla had in his lifetime. And I think he's a really, really important figure in the history of American popular music, an extremely just an important marker on the timeline of that relationship that I mentioned earlier between sort of like suppression of sensibility that comes with colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade, and you know, the introduction of like African rhythmic ideas during that time right through to the present day. You know, that that suppression of anything outside of the European Western canonic rhythmic sensibility in music, and that is a struggle that has been that has defined what popular music looks like in America and therefore the world, or the Western world at least. And he's just he's one guy. He's not an entire genre. You know, he's not swing, he's not the blues, he's not jazz or funk or hip hop. He's one guy. And I think that influence is just, it can't be understated. And you hear that influence, I think, all over hip hop, even without realizing it. You know, post Dilla, he, like, even rap beats, as you rap them, get looser. You're not quite as beholden to rhythm. You can hear that kind of Dilla Time idea on, like, you know, even like contemporary artists like Kendrick Lamar, and you know, it's bringing the kind of the human and the feel and the body into electronically made music, and kind of making sure that innate humanity that is in rhythm isn't lost in that kind of like transition over from physical instruments over to electronic instruments in hip hop. And I think that's probably to me anyway, from my point of view, that feels like his most important legacy, is to kind of retain that humanity, which is something, obviously, as we venture forth further and further down this path that we're on towards you know, machine made music and things like that, that is important to remember, to retain ourselves and our histories.
Like we talked about AI recently in the context of this kind of issue. Like I don't think the human touch is going to go away anytime soon.
No.
And that is why J Dilla's music has like stayed the test of time. There's been so many different releases since posthumous releases from, you know, the likes of The Shining, Jay Stay Paid. They're all out there. Rough Draft, one of the albums he was working on before that never got released. The Shining, he had 75% finished at the time of his death. So there's loads of beats and work out there to hear from what he did. But I think it's just, didn't want to bring too much into that because there's so many things to explore. But that to me, it was really, like, it's been so great to just spend time in Dilla's world, and the slipstream of excitement that people have when they talk about it and what he did is really infectious. So look, if you, I mean, I'd say there's about 20 tickets left for the J Dilla Donuts, as time of speaking, April 30th in Dublin at the Big Romance, 7:00 start. So if you want to come down. Tickets on Eventbrite, 909.eventbrite.com. You'll find us there. But look,
and we should recommend Dan Charnas' book,
Oh, yeah,
Dilla Time.
absolutely.
I have been listening to it on audiobook, and I think it's a really nice way to listen, especially if you're not someone who has a history of musicology or understanding rhythm. There's really useful kind of musical examples of what he's talking about in the book, that I think are really helpful in in those kind of first couple of chapters to kind of get your head around like what Dilla Time is. So I'm enjoying the audiobook. You've been reading the old school paper and ink version.
I got up to probably after that kind of D'Angelo Voodoo album. So I've lots to get through still. So I'm 180 pages into a 400 and something page book. So but really,
you'll be finished by the time we have the listening party.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah.
The more I'll know. So if you don't have time to read it, I will try and impart some more knowledge that I gleaned from the book at the listening party as well. But yeah, really great thing to do, and I think like I said, I learned so much from doing this, and I learned things that I had kind of not taken for granted, just been like, oh yeah, well, people are like, well, Dilla's great, Dilla's brilliant, but like, why is Dilla brilliant? And now I have a bit more of a understanding of why it moves me in a way, and why it's moved so, and why it's become so influential as well. So
sorry if you're picking up the weather here. It's just started extremely dramatically hailstones.
I can hear it. Yes. Wow.
Okay. Guess I'm wearing tights today
There we go.
when I go out.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been lovely.
Yeah. Thanks, Niall.
Yeah. J Dilla, J Stay Paid, J Dee, James DeWitt Yancey. Yeah, a brilliant artist and a brilliant producer, and there is an accompanying playlist, of course, to this podcast, which I'll put in the show notes as well. If you like what you hear on this podcast, it's patreon.com/99. If you want to show some more support to what we're doing and join the community that we've developed there. Oh my God. Is that you? Is that over there?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. And
Sure is. I am leaving the house in the next half hour, so that's going to be fun.
Shite.
And yes, I did wash my hair this morning.
Okay.
So
all right.
great.
Get the umbrella. Well, umbrella won't help you with that.
Nothing's going to help me with this.
Okay, I'll see if any hailstones come this way. Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to send them your way, please.
Okay. Well, look, thanks for listening to the 99 podcast this week. I don't think I'm going to be doing anything next week because it's Easter. The Easter holiday. It's a long bank holiday weekend. It's going to be tough to get back to it next week. But I think our probably next episode will be the best of the month after that.
I think so.
So yeah, we'll look forward to that. And in the meantime, yeah, enjoy yourself. Have fun.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter. Get some eggs into you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the 909 podcast. If you like what we do, why not consider supporting us at patreon.com/909.